All right, hello. Welcome to our extended disc mini webinar. Today's 15-minute webinar. We're going to highlight one of our more popular reports, which is the Sales 18 report. My name is Christina Bowser, and I'm the training director here at Extended Disc North America. And joining me is my colleague, Markku Kauppanen, president of Extended Disc North America. Welcome, Markku.
Hi, Christina. How are you today?
I am great.
Good.
We are going to record this webinar for those of you that need to review it or share it or watch it later. It will be on our YouTube channel and Q&A. You think I've done this long enough, right? We welcome your questions, but unfortunately with 15 minutes, we have a lot to cover. So if we don't get to them in the live session, please just put them in the Q&A section, and I promise you we'll follow up with you after the webinar is over today. So Markku, let's talk a little bit about the Sales 18. It's one of our DISC-based reports, but it's a little bit special, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit different than it really was developed when we started a couple of years ago, the development of the sales capacity assessment that we have been talking about on Tuesday afternoons in our summer series. And when we're developing that tool, we really felt that there would be a very strong connection between the competency-based assessment and the behavioral style-based assessment. So we wanted to make this seamless connection between the tool assessments for those clients who would really want to take a bit more comprehensive look at either a candidate or the existing salesperson to create a very specific development plan. But yes, Christina, it's based on the DISC questionnaire. So if you're a client of ours and you have people who have already completed the DISC questionnaire, you can process the Sales 18 report at no additional cost to you, and you do not have to ask your employees to complete it again. But it really breaks down the sales behaviors into those 18 same areas that the sales competency assessment looks at, is those 18 competencies, so we can really identify how comfortable or not comfortable a salesperson is with these sales behaviors. So one way to look at it is that kind of competencies are more kind of between the ears, what's happening there. Sales 18, it looks at how we are hardwired for these sales behaviors and how much energy it may take for us to modify behavior to succeed in these different areas.
So let's go ahead and just highlight just a couple pages of the report. The good news is once you understand one page of the report, you pretty much can read the rest of the report. So I went ahead, Markku, and I just picked one of the 18 sales competencies, and the one I picked today is prospecting. So can you talk a little bit about how this particular behavior shows up?
Yeah, absolutely, Christine. I mean, one thing that I hear about this all the time is that our clients seem to really like is that they have people in their organization that really do not know about DISC. And the one thing about Sales 18 is that our clients do not have to know anything about the DISC theory or model, because it uses a very familiar scales on identifying how comfortable or not comfortable a person is with these different areas. Like here we on our screen are looking at one of those 18 competencies, which is prospecting. And ideally we would have a salesperson who is very competent in and comfortable, I should say, with all of those behaviors, and they would, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, they would have that magenta color. They would get those +5 scores in every single of those 15 components that make up the overall score. But again, clients do not have to understand anything about this. They can look at these numbers, they understand what the percentage means, and it becomes very easy for them to really identify on a candidate side what kind of a fit there might be, or on the development side, where do we need to focus on our efforts to help our salespeople to become more successful.
Right. As Markku said, you don't need to know DISC to actually be able to interpret this report. You can pick it up and interpret it right away. You can see at the very top, it gives you a very clear definition of what prospecting is. So, as Markku and I have talked about, we all have our own definitions for sales competences. So this way, everyone is on the same page. So I just wanted to, go ahead.
I was going to say, Christina, so like this definition of prospecting, it matches exactly the same definition on the sales capacity assessment. We are looking at the very same 18 areas. So we can look at somebody's prospecting current competency level with the sales capacity assessment. And here we are looking at how comfortable they are in terms of their natural hardwired behavioral style. So you can really understand where the alignment is, or where we have some challenges. And let's say both of the scores are very low, that would really tell us that there's a lot of work to be done in order for this person to succeed in that particular area.
Exactly. So Marco, I went ahead and took this page and I kind of just zeroed in on just a couple of them. So the first one I want you to talk about is when someone scores that 5 or has that 100% match. What does that mean when it comes to, in this case, cold calling to book sales appointments?
It simply means that the person's natural behavioral style is such that this behavior is going to be very comfortable for them. They do not have to modify their behavior, or some people say they don't have to really leave their comfort zone. They can be who they are, and they don't really have to modify again those behaviors, and they're going to do well in that area. In fact, so well that they may over-focus in this area because it is so comfortable, and we tend to kind of do what's most comfortable to us if we are not thinking about how to modify behavior. So that magenta color all the way to the right on all of these bar graphs, that would be the ideal. The black rectangular box is actually what the person is scoring in these different areas. And like you pointed out in the cold calling to book sales appointments, here we have it at 100% match.
And then on the flip side, not all the way to the other extreme, but this person has a behavioral competence that scores in the negative. So keeping the conversation with a customer alive. So that 35% match, obviously a lot lower. How does that get interpreted?
It simply means that this kind of behavior would take more effort for this person, concentration, energy, and effort. And if this is an important component for the overall prospecting score, this is the area we want to pay particularly close attention to. How do we make sure that the salesperson remembers to modify their behavior in this area? Of course, in the terms of DISC model, they should identify the style of their prospect or perhaps the existing client and then make the appropriate modifications. But if something is 35% or lower match, it means that typically that's a challenge area. It's not something that we cannot overcome, but you typically have to spend quite a bit of effort there to improve that behavior in terms of making it more comfortable, and really ultimately is keeping in mind that this is something I need to do until it becomes second nature.
What I like about this report is that, you can really kind of go into the weeds and pick out specific competences that align with, the prospecting, in this case, competence. But there's another kind of magic number, I call it, that's built into this report. And that's the overall match percentage for that particular sales competence. In this case, 81% match. What does that mean when we're reading that?
It means good news. This person is comfortable with this behavioral area and prospecting. Anything over 67% as a sort of a general rule, it is comfortable for the person. Below 33%, it becomes more of a challenge, and obviously scores in between is simply in the middle. I think what most of our clients do, they look into this match percentage first. They want to understand the big picture with these 18 areas and say, okay, let's see where the strengths are, where the development areas are, and then they begin to look at those individual bar graphs to really hone in specific areas where the strengths are and where the challenges are. But I believe most people look at the match percentage right away because it's easy. We understand what percentages mean. 81% match, everybody knows what that is.
Yeah, and if you think about it, you're not necessarily looking at 18 match percentages. Again, just like the report has everything you need, but you may not need everything in the report. So if you have pulled out, whatever you have prioritized as the competences that you're looking for, whether it's in a job role or whether it's, in a candidate's process, whatever it is, that's a very quick reference point that you can look at. And if you talk about further in development, like you said, you can zero in on the particular competencies that fall under in this case, prospecting?
Yeah, it's an excellent point. We cannot focus on all 18 areas. Of course, in the ideal world, we have a salesperson that excels in all of these areas. It's not reality, it's not going to happen. But once we know what are the most important areas, let's say prospecting is important, somebody gets a match percentage of 81%. Now we know that we have somebody who are hardwired to succeed in that area. Of course, we need to look at other areas, for example, the competencies that we have been talking about when it comes to the sales capacity assessments.
Exactly. So just, I think we have one more I wanted you to talk about, and that's the Sales 18 competence summary. And still keep flowing along the lines of the one prospecting competence that we've been looking at. In this case, we see a competence match percentage of 90%. Can you talk a little bit about what that means, Markku?
Yeah, well, some people, I mean, when we look at the sales 18, if we break down all of those behavioral components that make up each of those 18 larger areas, if you will, some people, that's too much information. Maybe initial clients, they want to just get that bottom line number, and that is what the competency summary report does. It simply provides the competency match percentages for these 18 areas. So we don't have to look at all those bar graphs. A lot of people, especially in the hiring areas, they look at this first, and then they are able to generate the additional information if they believe that it's valuable and relevant. So very simply, it takes the bottom line numbers, the match percentages for each of these 18 areas, and gives you that number. For example, the person who was looking at a moment ago, they would receive a competence match percentage of 81% in this first area. Here we have an individual with even higher match at 90%, obviously meaning that Sam Sample, our friend, probably would do quite well in this area, assuming that he has the competencies also needed to be successful.
I think one of the general takeaways for people is that, again, whatever level of data you want to generate, you have the option to customize it. You can look at these, just very clear, succinct numbers that Markku had pointed out. Or, if you're maybe focused more on development of the individual, where you're looking at specific behaviors that help support this particular competence, then you can run a full report. So you have all these options, which are great. And not only that, you have the sales capacity assessment that also complement it. So for those of you that are maybe new or not as familiar with the sales competency assessments, we've done quite a number of webinars that we have recorded for you to kind of learn more about them. However, they are different. So Markku, just one more time, what's the difference between a Sales 18 report versus the Sales Competency Assessment report?
So the Sales 18, the assessment that we've been talking about today, is looking at how somebody is hardwired in terms of their behavioral style for these different areas like prospecting, qualifying, and so on, these 18 different very important areas for sales success. How much they need to modify or not modify their behavior in order to succeed. So that's something that remains really quite stable for all of us through our adult lifetime. If you use the DISC language, if you are a DI profile, for example, that's your hardwired behavioral style, it's really not going to change. You can learn to modify your behavior, but deep down, since we measure that natural hardwired behavioral styles, it remains quite stable. The other assessment, our capacity assessment, actually measure what is the present competency level in these same areas. So very quick example, let's say we are looking at Sam Sample. Now we know that behavioral style is such that he has a very good match when it comes to prospecting. He does not have to modify his behavior that much. We may want to also know, does he have the competencies to be successful with prospecting? If the both scores are very good, chances are they're going to do extremely well in that area. But let's say that they don't have the competencies required. They are the hardwired behaviors there. Now we know that in order to develop this person, we are going to have to focus on the competency development. And that tool, as we've seen, is very specific what to do next. If it's more of a behavioral style issue, then we just need to help the person to learn the steps to modify their behavior, typically for a very short period of time. I hope that clarifies that issue a little bit, Christine.
Definitely. So hopefully Marku was able to give you guys some clarity into the Sales 18. Again, a very, very popular tool because it's very intuitive. And most people have already run the DISC assessment on their sales teams. And this is just another report that you can generate without any additional questionnaire needing to be done. So how easy is that? So thank you guys all for joining us today. We do have a couple webinars coming up next week, a continuation of our SCA series. We're going to focus on a team report, the team sales process summary report. And then our standard Wednesday webinar, we're going to be doing, highly recommend you attend this, but it's our 4 steps to effective interactions. It's it's a template for delivering DISC. Making your life easier.
Absolutely.
Anything you want to add, Marku?
Just go to extendeddisc.org. On the top right-hand side, you see a tab events. Click on that, sign up for all of the upcoming webinars. You see the dates and times. And like I always said, even if you cannot make the date and time, be sure to register so we can email you the link so you can listen to the webinar later and maybe share with your colleagues or other people who you think that might find it valuable.
All right. Thank you guys, everyone, for joining us, and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye.